Council regular meeting for Tuesday, April 21st at 7:06. Roll call, please.
Mayor Bennett,
Here.
Councilor Harris,
She's here.
Councilor Harris may be on mute.
Okay, there I am. Sorry.
There we go.
Wasn't showing me my mute.
We'll do that one more
Guys,
time. Councilor
You're gonna
Harris,
have to let me go because I'm inept. No.
okay, she's here. Councilor Stratus,
Here.
Councilor Drop.
Here.
Okay. And I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. You can follow on if you want. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Okay. Anybody see any changes they need to make to the agenda?
Mayor Bennett, the only addition would be Resolution 740, which is for budget transfers.
Okay. Okay. I don't think I didn't drop that down lately, so we'll do 740 as other business.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. In that case, in preparation for the public hearing, we'll recess the regular session at 7:08 and open the public hearing at 7:08. The public hearing is now open for the purpose of considering and me get on the right page. Hold on.
And Mayor, that would just be on the agenda,
Okay.
the front page of the agenda.
All right. Okay.
It's the land use file.
Okay. Okay. For that makes it pretty easy. For considering the land use file to 2019-06 Crestview subdivision map plot 19-01-11-00 tax lot 501. In the agenda, it listed as the procedures to will be following. It'll be the staff report, questions from the city council, applicant presentation, public testimony, general public comments, and applicant rebuttal. Okay. And this first part is something that we don't normally do whenever we have public hearings, but it is really required, but quite often we don't have monetary interest involved. So let me read this and see if anyone has any positives on this. Does any counselor wish to disqualify him or herself for any personal or financial interest in this matter before us tonight? Or does any counselor wish to report any significant ex parte or pre-hearing contacts? Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the right of any counselor to hear the matter? First, does any counselor have any wish to report?
I do. I'm married to the planning commission. I'm married to the member of the planning commission, Landrat.
I think that should be fine because you're not getting a monetary interest in it. That's usually the what we're looking for on that. Okay, does any member of the audience wish to challenge the right of any counselor to hear this matter? Okay. Not hearing any. Oregon land use laws requires that all issues be raised if the issues are to be appealed. Failure to raise the issues at this hearing may invalidate their future appeal. Okay. Will the staff please present the report? Mr. Cobb, want to pass that on to the people?
And Henry,
Right,
if you don't
thank you,
mind,
Mr.
if we
Mayor.
could just take a brief pause. We did have someone that was trying to join and she is having trouble. And so let me go ahead and invite her really quickly
Okay.
and get that resolved. Just 1 second. With the city of Lowell, I saw you were having some challenges getting onto that conference call, and so I went ahead and sent an invite to your mia@sunridge.net. And so you can join there either on your computer, and it does have that same conference call. So you can check that. But you can join there from your computer or a phone as well.
Okay, so I should use a different conference ID than the one on the agenda.
Let's see.
I think that's the problem.
Should be 604. It's missing the 6 at the front. Okay. Well, yeah, so it's 604,880, 245 pounds. So that is why there's no 6.
That's the problem. The 6 didn't come through.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's on the agenda. It's just the 0, well, it's really 6 0.
Yeah, it should be 6.
Okay,
All righty.
all right.
You're welcome. No, sorry about that. Bye. We were missing a digit at the front of the conference call ID. So she is going to join us now. So copy and paste doesn't always work.
Nia Nelson.
Is now joining.
Okay, Henry, I will go ahead then and pull up the PowerPoint for you.
Okay. All right.
And I will share the screen.
You can just start on slide 2.
Okay. All right, there you go.
All right. Thank you, Jared. All right. Good evening, City Council. My name is Henry Hurley with the Lane Council of Governments. Tonight, I'll be providing the staff report for the Crestview subdivision. The overview of the presentation will be as follows. I'll tell you about some issues, some items to know up front about the proposal. I'll give a brief overview of the proposal. I will read the applicable criteria, go over the conditions of approval, and then you'll have an opportunity to ask any questions of the city staff. Next slide, Jared. Currently in Lowell, there's limitations on city water availability above 880 feet. That is what's keeping this proposed subdivision at phase 1 and those 26 lots. Anything above that currently cannot receive city water. That's currently identified as lot 27, although it will be renamed to unsubdivided remainder. A TIA was required by Lane County, and the applicant did complete it. Lane County concurred with the analysis and findings in the TIA. We'll go over more of that later. There were some remaining technical engineering questions to be resolved between the applicant's engineer and the city engineer. We will go over that later with condition approval number 27. There was a wetland delineation completed by the applicant. DSL concurred with the findings in the delineation. There were only 3 ditches identified, and those are exempt, and therefore they're not subject to the state removal of fill permits. Retaining walls are anticipated and will be required, and those plans will be drawn up during the construction phase. Next slide, please. The master road map shows the extension of the right-of-way past the current phase. The applicant has submitted a shadow plat that shows the road consistent with the master road map for Lowell. Eventually, Crestview Drive will extend down to the south to current city right-of-ways. The subject property does contain slopes of 15% or more. Therefore, the hillside development standards will apply. The fire department has not indicated that the department's vehicles cannot safely navigate the proposed street grade. There is an addition of a proposed hammerhead turnaround at the end of the road, and that is at a maximum grade of 8%. We received 2 official comments on the proposal, one from Seneca Timber and one from Ms. Nia Nelson of Lookout Point LLC. Slide, Jared. The property is owned by the McDougal brothers. It is for a 26-lot subdivision. The area above the 880 feet, currently phase 2, will remain unsubdivided. The area is zoned R1, and it is planned for single-family home site development. The property is currently vacant and consists largely of wooded, treed areas and grasses. Next slide, Jared. Sheet 1 is a tentative map in which the City Council will be considering tonight. This shows all 26 lots and Parcel A. Parcel A is where the proposed detention pond will go. This is where all the stormwater is proposed to be caught. Prior to final map approval, Lot 27 will be renamed to unsubdivided remainder. And as you can see, a recent addition to the map here is the hammerhead turnaround as required by the fire department. Also, according to the TIA and Lane County comment, the applicant will be providing a right-hand turn lane into the subdivision from North Moss. Next slide, Jerry. Sheet 2 is the proposed grading plan. This is tentative. The final grading plan will be required of the applicant. It was recently discovered by the applicant's surveyor that there are 2 private access easements used for logging that run through the unsubdivided remainder. The applicant will maintain this access as described in the easements. The applicant has proposed to put a locked gate where the private access easement begins to prevent unauthorized access. Next slide, Jared. Sheet 3 is the utility plan. This is a preliminary utility plan. A final one will be submitted. The applicant proposes to tap into existing utilities to supply city services. In cases where they do not exist, the applicant will provide them themselves. The applicant is providing a low maintenance water detention pond. This is seen as Parcel A, adjacent to North Moss. Once completed and expected, the city will assume long-term ownership and maintenance of this detention pond. Next slide, Jared. Sheet 4 is the profile plan of Crestview Drive. It shows the proposed profile at a maximum grade of 11%. The applicant will be constructing this new road with sidewalks on both sides. Next slide, Jared. Sheet 5 is the shadow plat. The Lowell Code requires applicants to show how big lots can further be subdivided, and that's what the shadow plat shows here. This is getting at the second phase of the subdivision when water availability becomes possible. So what's important to note here is a future extension of Crestview Drive and eventual connection to existing streets in Lowell to the south. The shadow plat is not the tentative plat that's being considered for development tonight. That is sheet 1, the tentative map. Next slide, Jared. Now I'd just like to read the approval criteria into the record. Section 9.204, 9.223, 9.220, 9.224, 9.228, 9.230, 9.516, 9.517, 9.518, 9.519, 9.520, 9.521, 9.522, 9.523, 9.630, 9.524, 9.805, 9.806, 9.807, 9.231, and also comprehensive plan policies, housing need policy C, 4, and 5, and development constraints C, 1, and 2. Next slide, please. The recommendation is that the proposal can be approved with the findings and conditions contained in the staff report. Planning Commission held a public hearing on this matter exactly 1 week ago. It should say April 14th, and one comment was received in favor of the proposal. The Planning Commission passed a motion to recommend approval onto the City Council. The Planning Commission made no changes to the staff report or the findings. The applicant had no disagreement with the findings or the conditions as contained in the staff report. City Council can take final action on the application tonight. Next slide, Jared. Now we'll go over the conditions of approval. Condition of approval number 1 is for the applicant to submit a final drainage plan to ensure adequate drainage can still be attained after more detailed construction plans are submitted to the city. Condition number 2 is for the condition for a right-hand turn lane as indicated by Lane County. This will be off North Moss into the new proposed street. Next slide, Jared. Condition 3 gets that Seneca Timbers comment between Seneca Timber and the applicant to execute a farm and forest management easement. This is just that the applicant acknowledges and accepts that there are timber practices happening nearby, and they may be incompatible with nearby residential homes. Condition number 4 is also related to Seneca's comment, and this is the requirement for the building to be constructed with fire-resistant materials and for chimneys to have spark arresters. And condition number 4 should be included as a plat note on the final plat. And these two conditions, 3 and 4, they address criteria subsection H for unreasonable risk to health and safety. Condition 5 is the requirement for the applicant to install sidewalks, including curb and gutter, along both sides of Crestview Drive. Sidewalks will also be required along the portion of the property adjacent to North Moss for Lane County. They call them half-street improvements. Condition 6 is the requirement for the street improvements to be for the applicant to install all street improvements. Condition 7 is for the applicant to show slope easements where required where topographical conditions necessitate cuts or fills for proper grading of streets, additional right-of-way, or slope easements. Next slide, Jared. Condition approval number 8, the applicant shall include a 1-foot reserve strip on the final plat. This 1 foot of land shall be deeded to the city. Additionally, regarding the private access easements, the applicant will install a locked gate beginning at the private access easement to ensure no unauthorized access. Also, a no parking sign will be required at the Hammerhead turnaround. Condition 9 is getting that half-street improvements. These are sidewalk, curb, and gutter as required by Lane County along North Moss. This will be adjacent to the detention pond. Condition 10 is the applicant's requirement to comply with street name sign. Next slide, Jared. Condition 11 is a requirement for the applicant to submit plans that comply with the streetlight standards of the Lowell Development Code. Condition 12, the applicant has proposed a mailbox structure as part of the subdivision, but the code requires the post office to have a referral comment regarding that. So this condition is just ensuring that the post office is okay with the placement of the mailboxes. 13 is the requirement for the applicant to comply with the clear vision areas. Next slide, Jared. Prior to the commencement of any preparation, grading, or fill, the applicant shall submit evidence of an approved NPDES permit. Condition 15 is related to the stormwater detention pond. This is just to ensure that it is relatively low maintenance for the city once it takes over. It shall include plans that have a low flow pipe at the invert that will completely drain the basin without any effort from the city. Side slopes should be 3-1 maximum and 4-1 if it's going to be mowed by public works staff. Lastly, there should be drivable access to the pond so that the city can perform maintenance. Next slide, Jared. Condition 16 is the requirement for a final utilities plan to be submitted and reviewed by the city. 17 is also related to the requirement for a final utilities plan to be submitted and reviewed by the city. 18 is the requirement to include all easements, dedications, covenants, conditions, or restrictions and the easements shall be consistent with Lane County recording requirements and procedures and ORS 92. Next slide, Jared, please. Condition 19, prior to the commencement of any site preparation, grading, or fill, applicant shall submit specific construction plans for review. These plans shall be consistent with the Hillside Development Standards. Condition 20 is the requirement for a final surveyor's report as indicated in subsection A of section 9.633. Condition 21 is the requirement for a soils and geology report. This report is pretty important in the eyes of the city. While we don't know what the report will contain, it has the potential, given what's contained in the report, to change the tentative map. And as such, staff is recommending that the report go in front of Planning Commission for review and recommendation for approval on City Council. Condition 20, next slide, Jared. Condition 22, prior to any site preparation, grading, or fill, the applicant shall submit engineer's plans 1 through 5 as indicated in section 9.633 C 1 through 5. Condition 23 is the requirement for each lot to receive a copy of the lot survey, geotechnical report, and development engineering plans. Condition 24 is the requirement for an inclusion of a note on the final plat stipulating that no platted lot may provide legal or physical access to the unsubdivided remainder. Next slide, 25. 25 gets at the requirements of section 9.805, which is an improvement agreement, and related is condition 26, which is the security agreement. Those two conditions get at a timeline for the applicant to make these improvements and make sure that the improvements actually hold up. And if the applicant fails to provide the improvements or they're unsatisfactory, the applicant can recoup some of the costs or perform the work on the applicant's behalf. Condition 27. Next slide, Jared. Condition 27 is getting at the issue I had mentioned at the outset with some remaining technical engineering issues that need to be addressed. These items are included in your packets as it's attachment E, and they're just some things that the two engineers need to kind of talk about, discuss, and agree on. And the city can find this condition met when the city engineer gives the city administrator verbal or written communication that all engineering items have been sufficiently addressed. The email is dated September 19, 2019. Next slide, Jared. Also going back to the beginning, the lot 27, that shall be removed and just replaced with unsubdivided remainders. That is condition approval number 28. And then condition approval number 29 is from Lane County Transportation, and that is for the applicant to approve or to obtain a facility permit to work on Lane County right away, which is on North Moss Street. And then myself, we have the city attorney here as well, and Max or Jared can answer any questions you may have.
Did I hear you right? I didn't have the best sound here, but
Sure.
the second phase, did I hear you say that would connect into North D Street?
Jared, you may know the exact name of the street, but yes, I believe it is Northeast Street. And if you, Jared, if you want to go back to sheet 5.
And so I don't think
it really showed it on the map.
it's not
I don't think it labels.
it's not D Street.
Not D Street, but the important thing to know is that the proposal is consistent with the master roadmap of Lowell that shows those rights of way being maintained,
Right.
or eventual future connection to the south.
Yeah, I think maybe, is it Carroll Street, maybe, Jared?
I do not remember even if there was a name to that street. It was a street that would connect to the Nelson
Is it
property.
Island?
And
Island?
I'll point out these streets on the master roadmap, they're only possible once the city can adequately provide water above the 880 feet.
Yeah, I got that.
Yeah.
I'm just curious as to what the final look is going to be for the circuitous route from Moss around to the connection for the second phase eventually in the future. So,
I guess there's no determination made as to what it's exactly going to look like. It's just conceptual at this time, and it's just really to point out that those rights of way are maintained. That the proposal is not going to cut off future roads that the city had planned.
okay.
If there are no other questions, the applicant has the opportunity to address the proposal as well.
This is Phil Veely with McDougall Brothers. And thank you very much, Henry, for your presentation. Mayor, Councilman, we have reviewed the conditions of approval and we have no objection to anything that's there. The plans are adequate as far as we're concerned at this point. So we open it up for questions. My civil engineer is also online with us, and he's more than happy to answer any technical questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
I guess another question I would ask is what would be the tentative or proposed solutions to providing water above 880 feet?
And Councillor Stratus, that is a very difficult question. And that is the reason why at this time they haven't proposed a phase 2. We don't have in our master plan a facility in that area. And so that would be something that would really have to come out of that master planning process. At one point, I believe there was a discussion about having a water tower higher than the 880, but those plans never materialized.
So just out of curiosity, does the city own any property high enough to provide, even if we had a water tower that would provide the drop necessary and the head necessary to provide water above 880 feet? Do we even have property in our possession that would be feasible at all in?
No, we don't. And that's why if they ever wanted to go above the 880, there would have to be a number of partners involved to be able to make that happen. From financing to property acquisition, there would have to be a number of things that would would need to be done for future development above 880.
So the likelihood of that is pretty slim, especially in the near future.
I would say in the near future, meaning like, the next year or two, probably so. But honestly, we're not really in a position right now to really address that, because it does depend on a number of partners coming together to make that happen.
Well, that's what I figured. So we're really looking way down the road.
Yeah, and I guess I don't want to speak for the folks that own those properties, because a lot of it really does depend on, the McDougal brothers. It would depend on the surrounding adjacent property owners that have that property. So there's just a number of things that would have to come together. If timelines were accelerated from McDougal brothers or from the adjoining property owners, that could change things. But right now, we don't have anything in our immediate plans to provide water above 880.
So would the burden be put upon the city in the future for this, or would the burden be placed upon the applicant?
So the burden right now would be on the applicant to provide water above 880. But the city, of course, could be a partner in helping facilitate that if there was a need and desire to provide water service above that 880-foot level. But it would be an expensive project, and so like I said, there's just a lot that would need to go into that discussion, and a number of partners would be involved.
So the applicant and their engineer are available right now. Does the engineer or the applicant have any input as to this situation?
Phil Veely with McDougal, we have nothing at this point.
Any other questions? I've got a couple. The city staff anticipate the need to add additional holding basins at the wastewater plant to accommodate not only our normal customer usage and existing rainfall, but adding the additional Crestview subdivision wastewater customers.
No, Mayor, right now we have adequate capacity to be able to serve this.
I know that whenever we have big rains, a lot of times it seems like we almost fill those things up. It is. So we feel good in that right now.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Wherever we terminate our water wastewater lines and where the subdivision picks up, who's responsible for laying that line between the subdivision up on the hill and where our lines terminate?
So that is the responsibility of the developer to provide service to the development.
I thought I understood that. And I saw the easement for the lumber trucks. Does that mean the lumber trucks are going to be driving through the development whenever they're carrying logs out?
So that,
I guess I can speak to that a little bit, Jared, and maybe
Sure.
you, and then maybe Tony, if you have more insight on the active seasons that you found. From what I understand, the applicant is just, certainly it's possible if lumber trucks come through because they can use that active season, but from the applicant's perspective, they're just trying to maintain that easement. They don't want it just to, block it, and then therefore there might be issues later down the road that, hey, you blocked my easement, and I have it recorded. So from their perspective, they're just trying to make sure that it's still accessible. We don't know if it's how frequently it's used.
Yeah, I saw where they'd be responsible for repairs and upgrades and stuff like that, so I didn't know.
So just out of curiosity, obviously, I think most of us know that probably wouldn't be, it's not a gigantic plot of timber up there. This wouldn't be, a regular occasion, but are the streets going to be able to accommodate an 80,000-pound log truck with a full load of logs? Or are they going to be up to that spec to handle that, whereas most of the streets in Lowell are not?
This is Tony Favreau, the engineer, and streets are typically designed for an 80,000-pound load for fire trucks. And the section we're putting through there should be able to, or will handle 80,000 pounds.
Okay.
Thank you, Tony.
That holding basin, it said it had a drain pipe in it. Where does it drain to?
It drains out into, it will drain out to a proposed pipe that's going to run parallel to Moss Lane and then run southerly on Moss Lane into an existing 12-inch pipe and then eventually down across the street.
To the wastewater plant, or?
No, it won't go to wastewater. It's stormwater, so it's separated.
Okay, so, okay.
And Mayor, that is just so everyone is aware, the reason why a detention pond is required is because Lane County doesn't have the capacity in their system for additional stormwater. And so that is why this is the first subdivision that I'm aware of that we have that has stormwater detention. That's because we don't have a city system to connect it to.
So Jared, did I understand that's ours to maintain?
Yes.
So how is that affecting our folks?
That's one of the reasons why we requested that it be designed for lower maintenance, so that if it's mowing, it's something that could be done, for instance, possibly with the tractor. So we're not having to spend a whole lot of time on maintenance. But just because of where it's located, that's really the only option that we would have. Something you'll see with other cities, you could have them is private, but there are a number of challenges, I think, with that. And so that's why we opted for this solution.
And do we have to somehow maintain the pond? Is there something to that?
I'll let the engineer, Mr. Favreau, speak more to this, but my understanding is that for the most part, it will be dry for most of the year.
Okay.
Yes, this is Tony Favreau. Yes, the pond is actually, we'll probably not put grasses in it. It'll probably be a combination of plants that are very low maintenance, and the pond is designed to self-drain and knock the peak flows off, so there's no erosion either upstream or downstream.
So I take it that holding basin, it's when it drains out of there, usually it'll just drain into the subsoil, but where the drain is, and then that would, if it did drain, it would go to the lake without going through the wastewater plant. Is there anybody downstream that's going to be impacted by that?
No, it's been designed, and you're right. Most of the storms will just soak into the basin and never leave the site. On occasion, when you get a larger storm, it will fill up and overflow into the existing drains along Moss Avenue. There's an existing 12-inch pipe, and those flows will be less than what gets there naturally right now, simply because we're holding so much water into the basin.
Okay.
Well, what's the depth of the retention pond?
I think it's about 3.5, 4 feet.
Is it going to be fenced around it?
It can be.
Is it similar to the one that's now that I drive past every day? It's on Bob Straub. There's a new development there.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
looks like
I haven't.
it's just a grassy open area, not grassy, but a planted open area with that's like pondish, but there's obviously no water in it, but they have plantings in it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it'll be similar to that. It should be similar to that.
Okay.
Okay, that makes sense to me. I guess the fencing is a good question, only because when that thing is full, are we concerned about kids getting in there? I know it's only 3 or 4 feet, but
It will never get that deep.
okay.
As deep as it in a worst case scenario, it'll be about 2 feet deep, and that's in a real large storm. But for the most part, it'll be 6 inches deep, 6 inches to maybe a foot deep.
Okay,
But it's designed to direct the water away as
gotcha.
opposed to hold for long.
And just to add to that, just real quickly, so across the street in the industrial park, they have a few ponds there as well. And so this is, it certainly won't be out of place where it's located.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, one final one. Whenever they put in the new development, they're going to be using the new electronic transmitter equipped water meters.
So Mayor, and I'll let Max add to this if he'd like to, but they will receive new water meters, the same ones that we've been installing for the last couple of years. So they'll have the ability to use that system if that's who we go with, but they won't actually be submitting radio reads when they're first installed.
Yeah, I understand that. Okay.
But yes, there'll be the new meters.
Okay, so we won't have to pull a meter out and put a new one in.
No, sir.
Pull out one brand new one and stick another brand new one in there. Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions? Okay. Does the applicant or the representative wish to add anything to the staff report?
No, I've said everything I need to say.
Okay. Now's the time for public testimony. Are there any members of the audience who wish to speak in favor of the proposal?
I would like to do so. This is Mia Nelson,
Okay.
living at 40160 East First Street in Lowell. I also submitted written comments on the behalf of Lookout Point LLC, which is a company that I own with my dad, and we own the property that is immediately south of this property, the subdivision property. And I want to just start by saying I really support this proposal, and I didn't at first because I had some concerns relating to both the extension of the road and the water system that have been discussed already. But to my great surprise, the applicant agreed to meet with me and address all of those concerns completely, which I really appreciated, and I think that it's really a benefit to Lowell also. One of the things that's been talked about is how the majority of this property isn't going to be able to be developed because it's over 880 feet. And that is one reason why I think this is such an important development, because there isn't a lot of land in Lowell that is under 880 feet that is still vacant. And I appreciate that they're doing this, and they did a really good job of laying out the lots to make efficient use of the property. When I met with the applicant, they showed me some alternate ideas that they had, and I came to understand that they had tried many different approaches to developing this property. It has a lot of challenges. It's got the slope, it's got the power lines. It's kind of an awkward shape, and they did the best they could within those constraints. I want to answer a couple of questions that I heard come up, if I might. Just on the road, someone asked, where does it connect? It actually would be an extension of 6th Street that would go to the east and then like loop up and turn straight north and then intersect the property. So that street doesn't really exist at all at this point. But the important thing is that they made provisions so that that street could be extended someday. As to the water, I doubt that anyone on the council or staff knows anything about this, because it happened before any of you were involved. But in fact, the city did have an adopted reservoir plan for an upper reservoir on property that Lookout Point LLC, my family's company, owns. That we worked with the city quite extensively to figure that out. There was a budget created. This was in 2001, almost 20 years ago. There were systems development charges figured. They were being collected, and this is exactly the right thing to do. The plan was that all the land below 880 was going to get developed, just as the applicant of this subdivision is now doing, and that system development charges would be collected as that development went on, put aside for a kitty of money, and then the reservoir would have been built. Unfortunately, for nothing more than political reasons, the city stopped collecting those systems development charges. And I do have all of the evidence of what happened if any of you are interested in learning more about what happened. But that decision basically put Lowell's future on ice, because there have been dozens and dozens and dozens of houses that have been built and not a dollar's been collected for that future reservoir. So I'll just conclude by saying, if the city council would like to, at a future meeting, hear about all that happened, review the documentation that I still have, I would be delighted to come in and bring you up to speed on that, because I would like nothing more than for the city to take a serious look again at what it would take to build out the rest of your town. There's a few of us landowners that collectively own, it's probably about 150 acres that needs that water tower to continue, and that is the future of Lowell. And it is not going to happen without that. But to conclude, this subdivision is exactly the right thing to take one step in that direction of someday being able to develop the whole town. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Do you have any questions of the speaker?
So Mia, this is Councilor Stratus.
Hello.
My question would be that if the water tower above 880 benefited a small number of landowners that hold the 150 acres that are the future development areas that we can get into, my question would be that if people were below 880, why would they pay system development charges for that water that would only benefit certain people above 880?
Well, for one, that's the way almost all systems development charges are. They never are completely egalitarian. They can't be. For an example would be, people pay systems development charges in Lowell for sidewalks, even though they have sidewalks, even though they live in a subdivision where the developer paid for all the sidewalks or the homeowners did. Another reason is that the original plan was, well, this is still true, that water is actually available to everybody in Lowell because it can always flow down to the next level and is additional fire protection, which Lowell is going to eventually need that again, also more storage capacity. And in fact, the original plan was not to build a second reservoir right next to the one that already exists. The plan was to put that capacity up and kill two birds with one stone. So that's what happened. And
okay,
that was a long time ago. It was 20 years ago. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mia. Anybody else want to speak in favor of the proposal?
Mia Nelson
is now exiting.
Okay. Hearing none, are there any members of the audience who wish to speak against the proposal? Hearing none. Does the applicant have any further comments?
No, not at this point.
Okay. Mr. Cobb, is there any further information that we need to hear or be disclosed?
No, sir, nothing on my end. Henry, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I think council maybe at the point to close the hearing and deliberate and possibly make a decision.
Okay. Hearing none, the hearing is closed at 7:56 and the regular session is reconvened at 7:56. Okay, we would be open, it's on page 3, we'd be open to a motion if anybody so desires.
Gotta get to page 3. Okay.
They got there. I'd like to make a motion to approve the application based on the recommendations of the Planning Commission and the standards, findings, conclusions, and recommendations stated in the staff report.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion or questions? Okay. All those in favor of a motion to approve the application based on the recommendations of the Planning Commission and the standards, findings, and conclusions and recommendations stated in the staff report, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Passed. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We do
Thank
too.
you.
We appreciate it tremendously also.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bill Veely.
Is now exiting.
Okay.
Hey, Max.
Hi.
Okay, next up is the consent agenda. Okay.
Oh, that's
Okay, what we have is consent agenda.
Is now
for April,
exiting.
21st, 2020 City Council meeting, including the City Council meeting minutes for March 17th, 2020 City Council special meeting for April 7th, 2020 City Council work session for April 7th, 2020 and financial report for February 2020 and the check register for March 2020. Items can be removed for later consideration as new business. Otherwise, does someone have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Not hearing any. Okay. Next up is public comments. Jared, did you have any written or public comments that you wanted to submit?
No, sir, I have not received any.
Okay, thank you. Any other council comments at this point? Okay.
What page are we on?
I'm still on page 1, but we're going to go to page like 284 or something
I
like
was
that.
gonna say this,
It is page, so the city administrator report is page 364 of 412.
Oh my goodness.
There you go.
it was page what? Three what?
364.
7,568, Gail.
You can't get there from here.
You're trying to kill us here.
There. Okay.
Get to see everyone's face,
Yeah, come on, you. Hold on.
but whatever you would like.
There it is. What are we on? Administrator's report? I think that's what we're on.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So next up is city administrator's report. And like you said, it's on page 363. Mr. Cobb, if you'd like to present.
Yeah, so Mayor and Council, a few things to discuss with you tonight. I won't spend a lot of time on this first one because I think we've all heard plenty about the coronavirus and things that are occurring, but did receive some information from the county that I thought was pretty interesting. You've got here a graph of their cases in Lane County, and you can kind of see that things are finally starting to taper off a bit, which is certainly good news for us. The governor, of course, still has us under a state of emergency, and we have a local one as well, but I thought I would at least provide some of that good news that we're starting to see things improve a bit.
Good.
The next piece of this, and this is actually even where a number of cities are starting to pivot to is an economic recovery plan. And so Lane Economic Development, one of the things that they've been stressing is that cities start to plan for what happens after the stay-at-home order is lifted, not just for the next, for the subsequent few weeks after, but also months and even a year or two beyond. Because as we know, this is going to have and has already had a number of economic impacts. And so one of the things that was stressed was that even within the existing plans that you have, how can you make improvements to them that would make you more resilient in the future, and not just thinking about how it would assist in a pandemic, but also say an earthquake. And so simple things that we might look at is the future plan for the city hall, specifically that council chambers that would serve as a multi-purpose room. What other uses could that have? It would obviously stretch the dollars that are put into that facility even further by providing those additional services. It may not even be services that the city provides. There may be another nonprofit in town that may be able to use it for something that could assist in some sort of disaster. And so those are some things that we just need to think about as we continue to plan pretty much all of our infrastructure projects. How can we design them such that it increases our own resilience when we have an emergency?
Yeah, I know that we live on property tax money for a large portion for the city, but I just heard earlier tonight that revenues going into the state was down like by 87%. So the people that live on businesses and things like that are getting just torn apart. So anyway, go ahead.
Yes, that's certainly right. And we've got, I think when we get down to our supplemental budget, I've got a few comments about things like that. But any questions at all on where we're at with the coronavirus and any of the guidance from the county?
Nope.
Okay. So next item, staff performance evaluations. We did complete our evaluations. All of our staff thankfully received a positive evaluation. Our scores were quite a bit higher than in prior years. I attribute that a lot to two of our new staff members in Public Works who have worked extremely hard since they've been here. They've got a great work ethic. They're dependable and doing basically whatever they can to grow their own skill sets and develop into the positions. Just listed a few areas here for development, job knowledge, judgment, and planning. These first two will largely just improve as particularly Public Works continues to train and develop. They're working on their certifications now. And then planning and follow through were improved quite a bit over the prior year. And again, I think as that staff becomes more confident, that'll improve. And I just realized the one thing that I will provide to you after the meeting is a copy of that blank evaluation. We've typically provided that to the council every year just so you can see how we conduct those evaluations. But essentially, we have a number of areas that both the employee and the supervisor rates, and then after the employee rates themselves, or after the employee rates themselves, they provide it to the supervisor. So either myself or Max Baker, who then fills out the supervisor's portion of it, and then we have a meeting to discuss any differences. And so I'll provide that to you after the meeting. The last point on here is that historically we've had, I would say, fairly high staff turnover in Public Works. That's been a challenge. And so really from our perspective, we really would like to make sure that we continue to invest in the development of those employees and also ensure that they're compensated fairly so that we can keep qualified, competent staff. One of the big challenges is that if you have a constant, and I know many of you know this, if you have a constant revolving door, you're always kind of just teaching the basics, and you don't get to move on from just servicing water and sewer, but then to streets and parks. And so that's really where we want to get to, is where kind of water and sewer are, I don't want to say second nature, but they've got a good handle on it, and then we can focus more on some of the other services that we provide.
Good plan.
Any questions on that?
No.
Okay, so one piece of bad news here is the council did authorize us to submit an application for a CDBG loan and grant a couple months ago. We did start the application, and as we started moving through it, we kind of had more and more questions, and the two things that it became apparent were that the requirement for environmental analysis was going to add more time to this. And when I spoke with our local representative with CDBG, we were told it could take up to 6 months to have the application approved, and for them to tell us what grant funding, if any, they could provide. And we kind of tried to tackle that from a number of different angles to see if there was any way to get even a feeling for whether or not they would provide the 45% grant. And we were told that no, that everything would have to be complete. They would have to have their time to review, and the shortest period would be another 4 months, but it could take up to 6 months. As you know, that would create problems for us, because the 2 street projects that we have really need to move forward as soon as possible. And so the recommendation from CDBG and from myself at this point is that that we go ahead and move forward with the 2 street projects and the water portions of those projects. And then later on, we can apply for the water meter project, which is not time sensitive. In fact, we can still continue along that path, but there would just be, it would basically put off those 2 projects for another year. And I think that at this point, we really need to get those projects done. Are there any comments on that?
We have funding
For,
the water, the pipes and the under the streets.
so that would be something that we would have to fund out of the water fund, more than likely with a loan.
Okay.
So, okay, I probably should have this down. So this grant would have been for that?
So the grant would have covered, and let me take a quick step back here. So originally this came about because we had looked at applying for CDBG funding for the water meter project, which is about a $200,000 project.
Right, okay.
And then after
Sorry,
they
get 'em mixed up.
reviewed, no, you're fine. After they reviewed the, just for everybody else and anyone that's listening on the call, after CDBG reviewed our finances and reviewed the project, they said we were right on the edge of being eligible, and the only way they could determine eligibility for the water meter project for that grant was for us to actually submit the application. And the reason we were on the edge was because essentially they said that we did not have enough debt to be able to qualify. Our debt burden was too low.
I hate
So,
that.
I know it sounds counterintuitive, but that's what they use for these applications. And so the idea was, okay, well, we're already doing these streets. It's good practice to go ahead and replace the water lines as you're replacing the streets, because the street's torn up. So it's less costly. And then go ahead and apply for the loan and grant package, because if we got it, then that could cover up to 45% of just the water lines, those 2 new water lines and the water meters. But unfortunately, timing is an issue, is going to be an issue if we move forward in that direction. If we went ahead and got a loan for the 2 water lines, that would still count against our debt, because it would still be debt. And so essentially, it would do what we were trying to do, which was to become eligible for those CDBG funds. The only difference is that it would only be for the water meter project. It would not be for the 2 water lines. And the 2 water lines, the estimate was $140,000 for those 2 lines.
And that's not in the funds that to do the streets. That's
Correct.
separate.
Correct.
So that's getting close to 200,000 per street.
And I don't have those numbers in front of me
Roundabout.
right
Okay.
now. The difference I would say is, and that's kind of a discussion we can have later on, but the water lines will be paid for, would be paid back with money from the water fund, not from the street fund.
Okay.
So different funding source.
Okay.
Grant applications. So we did submit a couple grant applications last Monday and then the prior Friday. Both applications requested $214,243. Staff has a presentation that will be scheduled for May 5th or 6th with the Land and Water Conservation Outdoor Recreation Committee, and then the local government grant application. They have an advisory committee, and that meets typically the 2nd week in June.
Is it going to be electronic presentation?
So the presentation to the Land and Water Conservation Committee will be electronic. I know that Oregon Parks and Rec really wants to do it in person, and so they did say that if they couldn't conduct it in person in June, they may try to push that back another month.
Okay, no questions? Go ahead.
So committee meetings, Planning Commission, I won't belabor this because we just had the public hearing and approved the subdivision. And then Blackberry Jam Festival Committee met on Monday, April 13th, and they did elect to cancel the 2020 Blackberry Jam Festival. We've already provided a number of refunds to sponsors and vendors, and the next meeting will be scheduled for August.
The Scandinavian Festival got canceled too, which makes sense. Thousands of people, but it's all quite sad.
Are we gonna, in our goals, we've planned to do, 6 events or so. I know that's difficult with what's going on, but if things lessen up without having the vendors, is there a thought of doing events still in the park, like musical events, one-offs, or whatever, just so we're going to need to have some community rebuilding after this is over. And maybe it's not with all the vendors, which takes time and effort to organize, but the movies in the park, once we're done with this, the concerts, something to just put Lowell back together as the Lowell family.
I think it'll probably just depend on, it's all of that, of course, depends on what happens at the federal level, the state level, and then it becomes a decision that the council can make. As of right now, I don't know of any city that will be holding any events this summer.
Right.
And of course that could change, but as of right now, the only thing that frankly came up today to my attention and will be something that we'll have to discuss are farmers markets. Mm-hmm. Because I believe a number of those are still moving forward with their plans. And so that's something I have on my list to reach out this week and see where other cities are at with those. But at the end of the day, if it comes, again, it's, federal level kind of trumps typically state and then local government. And so if we are given the okay, then that will be a decision that the council will have to make. And staff we'll get we'll get whatever information we can from the county health department, since they are the health officials, and then council could make a decision.
I saw where Seattle was opening their farmers market. I was really surprised.
I thought
yes, I believe Eugene is moving forward as well.
Gene is too.
Which, I mean,
It's food. I mean,
yeah, yeah. Well, right, it is food, so that makes sense.
Okay.
Anyway. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so let's see. We can move on then to project updates. So library renovation, we did put those flyers out in the last copy of the bridge. We put the news release on the city website, Facebook, Blackberry Jam page. And so I know that we've already discussed this before. I mean, the timing's not great, but I know we'd still like to move forward on this. We do have it set up to where if somebody does want to make a payment, they can also pay it online through Express Bill Pay. One caveat to that, and I don't know how many of you pay your bills online. We've had a number of issues with Express Bill Pay over the last few months. Essentially, before the pandemic occurred, they were already at capacity and struggling to keep up. So when this pandemic hit, of course, city halls are closed to the public and more people are paying online. And so they became overloaded. There have been a number of days where there has not been any service until in the evenings. And so I know they're still working on that, but if you know of anyone that's trying to pay their bill and they can't, they can always put it in the Dropbox here. They can mail it or anytime in the evening after 5 or 6 o'clock is the best time to do that.
It's always worked really well for me.
yeah.
Well, and it does work for so the auto pays that are set up will continue to go through, but it has been down quite a bit. And we have, just so the council knows, we have voiced our frustration. You know, of course, the city clerk, Joyce Donnell, gets a lot of those phone calls, and it's frustrating to her as well because, again, they weren't necessarily trying to blame it on the pandemic, but I made it pretty clear to them that this was an issue before. And so, frankly, they shouldn't have been accepting new customers when they couldn't support the existing ones they had. The company has a great record. In fact, that's frankly the reason why I think they've gotten to the point to where they're at, is that they've just continued to bring on more and more clients and they have not kept up. And so we are receiving some, I haven't seen the email yet, but they are going to issue us some partial refunds for the last couple months because of the inconsistent service.
Okay.
So we'll put some information out to the public on that as far as challenges with Express Bill Pay, because we just got the response yesterday. Any questions on that? Main Street and Lakeview Avenue, bid documents and drawings are about completed, and so we'd like to have a short special meeting April 29th, 30 minutes before the Budget Committee meeting, just to answer any questions that the council may have on those plans. We've reached out to the school district to discuss the sidewalk that runs along the shop building, and so I know the engineer is putting together another option for that, one of which would basically have the sidewalk above the street, like a typical sidewalk. And so we've been working with the school district and then also with our building inspector to see if we can make that work as an option.
Would the school help with funding on that, or is that all ours?
So the school would have a few things that they would need to do. They've got an access door that goes out to that sidewalk now, and they'd have to move a vent and add another door. So they would have a few things that they would need to do on their end.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. Again, the census, please, if try to help us get that word out, to have people fill out the census, particularly now because, again, a lot of funding is tied to our population and demographics, and so that's really important. revenues and the pandemic. Of course, we all know this will impact revenues. I won't get too deep into the weeds here. The revenues that we expect it to impact the most would be the highway taxes that we receive from the state. And then also, and it almost seems wrong to say, but we expect the liquor taxes and the marijuana and cigarette taxes to remain pretty constant, if not increase.
I would think so.
The water and sewer, we may have somewhat of a dip there. I think we'll know a lot more after this month. Right now, we would just really be making a guess at this point. But I think after this month, we'll know a lot better where we're at with water and sewer.
Yeah. It stopped raining so soon, you'd think we'd be ahead. Okay, any other questions of Mr. Cobb? Okay, next up is Public Works. Mr. Baker? If you're still there.
Yep, still here. Technical difficulties. I'm sure Sam's seen that when you use Teams and Stream, your battery goes very quick.
Yeah, that's what I had to move my table to the
Yeah,
chart.
so I probably lost you guys there for a second.
And that's what I was doing as well. I was plugging in.
I started out with my plug. That's the one thing I did right.
I just moved this time, so it was
You
not.
just forgot to unmute it, Gail.
What?
No, I was joking. I said you just forgot to unmute it. You plugged it in, you just didn't unmute it.
That's right.
Okay, public report. So pretty much the usual for this time of year. Staff's been working on mowing, trimming, and noxious vegetation citywide. City owns quite a bit of property. Actually took the time the other day to add up the amount of property that we maintain, and it's just over 15 acres. That's not counting the Sunridge Park. So all 15 acres of that we manicure pretty nice. I'm sure most of you have noticed how the park looks, both parks, right of ways. The new mower has made a significant difference in the quality of the mow we provide, and also has cut down the time substantially. Our groundskeeper was able to mow both parks today. That's the first time in 6 years that I've worked here that we've got both parks in one day. So
Good.
Looks very nice, makes a huge difference. As Jared mentioned with the COVID-19, both park restrooms, playground, and Paul Fisher Park covered bridge, Paul Fisher Park playground and the covered bridge remain closed until further notice. This was kind of be a, go with the flow kind of thing. Even though the covered bridge is not owned by the city, we're still responsible for the maintenance. So we just made the call to go ahead and leave that closed. Haven't had any complaints, and there's very little traffic down there. So
Didn't I see it open a week or so ago, or not?
you seen it? I believe that was possibly a mistake on somebody's end. That was not one of my staff members that opened that. So
Okay. No, I just
maybe
I
volunteers.
thought I saw the gate was up. Okay.
It was
thank you.
open. Yeah. So after we started doing our social distancing stuff and everything that we adopted, I think last month on the 22nd, we closed it the following Monday after talking with staff. Excuse me. And we're just gonna leave it until further notice. Yeah, I think that's the best decision. So.
Definitely.
Wastewater treatment plant collections. Staff is working on operations to switch the plant from winter permit to summer permit. We have different parameters from May to October. So one of the main things that we do is reduce the solids inventory, so the amount of bugs that we have to do, make treatment, and then also taking some of the high flow processes off. So we have an extra clarifier that we run in the winter time. Some other changes so that we can prepare for the more strict permit limits beginning May 1st. So we're sitting really good right now, so it should be a smooth transition for us. Due to the high demand from the public, several calls a week, many questions, the city will be having green waste drop-off. It will actually be this Saturday, the 25th. Because of social distancing, we're going to try to respect that the best we can. We will not be providing assistance in unloading the green waste like we normally do. Normally the staff member that is present that day will help unload all the loads or unload them by themselves. We will not be providing this at this time. I don't think it's appropriate. The one exception might be, and it's very rare if it happens, that if maybe somebody elderly or somebody that needs assistance, if they stay in their vehicle, and that might be a possibility. We have been sharing that with people when they call that yes, it will be open, but we will not be providing assistance. And so far, everybody's been fine with that.
Okay.
Water treatment plant. Staff repaired a water leak on East 4th Street. First house on the corner there. We actually had the help of a new contractor. This is a contractor that spun off from H&J. A couple former employees opened up their own business. I got with the CA, we went through the loops and got the insurance and made sure they're legitimate. They did a phenomenal job. Most people who drive there have seen it. They did the repair, hot patch, paved, and everything in the same day in about 4 hours. So it was a excellent job. A little bit of a difficult repair, but we were able to get that done. So that's a good thing. Staff is currently working on a program for valve exercising citywide. This is a pretty extensive maintenance program. So not only locating and checking the condition of this would be the water main valves citywide, but also fully opening and fully closing them just to check for proper operation. This is necessary for when there is an event where we'd have to close down a main. You want the line to work in the event of that. And we have had issues with those since I've worked here. We've had a couple fire hydrants that have been knocked off by vehicles. And luckily the valve reservoirs didn't get drained because we got the valve closed in time. So just a good practice.
Good.
Also, currently working on requests for bids for getting the reservoirs cleaned, the water tower reservoirs and the clear well. This is typically something that's done every 5 years. And I think it's mandatory every 10. I'll have to double check on that. So we're pretty good about getting it done. That was done with the last upgrade in 2012. And then a visual inspection was made in 14 and in 16, just not an actual entrance.
Okay.
So typically this usually isn't a very expensive cost. There's several companies that do this professionally. That's all they do. And I've had several quotes. I get quotes every year to see if we can fit it in the budget and if it's appropriate. And they range anywhere from $2,200 to $3,800. So
To clean? Just to clean?
yeah, to clean. And what they do, it's because the water tower will still be in service and still be providing water. It's a pretty cool process. And if we actually do it, invite you guys to come participate in it. But they have a certified diver in almost what looks like a hazmat wetsuit. And they get a full chemical bath with sodium hypochlorite, usually bleach. And they let it sit there and soak on them. And then they climb up top and all their cords, umbilical cords, everything is fully sterilized before they enter. And they use, it kind of looks like a vacuum, like a carpet cleaner vacuum. And it's powerful, but not so powerful that it stirs the sediment up. And then they just go along the bottom real slow on the sides. And they record everything on cameras so that we can see it from outside and we have it for documentation. So yeah, really neat process. And definitely something that needs to be done. Regardless of how clean the water you make is, you always get some turbidity. And over time, we make 38 to 50 million gallons a year. So you have a little bit in each gallon. Eventually, that's going to build up somewhere. So, and lastly, training and certification. So nothing really new here. I was hoping to be able to give you guys some good news. Both staff members and myself were anticipating taking tests last month. We all, well, with the exception of one, went to review classes in preparation for these. And because of the recent COVID-19 things, all testing facilities and everything has been on hold. Even though they have current approval, it will not count against them as their allotted time they have to take the test. So the state will reach out to us at the appropriate time and let us know when we can test, and then we'll restart the 6-month clock from there. So not really anything lost by that, and they're still gaining experience, so they can still work towards progression of the next certification. It's not going to count against them. So everybody is working on Kin Carry books still. Both the new staff, like Jared said, are very eager. So they are flying through the books, which is a good thing. So, and one other thing I might add, I kind of spaced it Friday when I turned my staff report into Jared, code enforcement, and I'll be sure to get that back on the list. It's always, especially this time of year, it seems to be a pretty popular thing with the nice weather. So we have had some recent code things. We had a couple motorhomes that were parked on the road that Jared was able to get a hold of Oak Ridge, and they took care of. 2 other abandoned vehicles that were taken care of, and then just a handful of regular door hangers for maybe a reminder to, you know, mow the right-of-way strip in front of your house, or the part outside your fence, or to not park in the middle of the road. So nothing major, nothing out of the ordinary for this time of year. And as you guys see in the bridge article, the CA did include the normal noxious vegetation section of code that we put out every year in April. So people are, with everybody being home, most of the yards are being maintained and upkeep, and we will start full code enforcement on that May 1st. So
Thank you,
that's
Max.
all I
I think
have.
I think people are getting used to actually doing the code, you know, taking care of their properties better, that now that they realize somebody's watching.
Yeah, I think it's just the consistency. We've had pretty good consistency the last couple years. And really, you know, we're not really being hard on people. We're just being consistent. So
Yeah, 4 or 5 years ago, it wasn't being done. So we appreciate that. Any other questions of Max? If not, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is the monthly police report.
Mayor and Bennett and Council, the only thing I would add to this is that in the notes there on the bottom right, you'll see a couple of actions. The first was a report of theft, and that was filed with the Lane County Sheriff's Department. The second were those code complaints that Mr. Baker mentioned about on North Cannon, and those were vehicles. One vehicle I know that was removed. We have 2 RVs. One has been removed. The other asked for more time. I went and took a look at it, and the reason was because of the DMV being closed, but I went and looked at the tag, and I think the last tag was done in like the 90s. So I think they've had enough time, and we'll get that one taken care of.
You're really unreasonable, Jared.
So unreasonable.
90s was a good decade. Okay.
That's all I have for the police report.
Okay. Any questions? Not hearing any.
Just to be fair, I mean, to legally operate a motorhome, it has to be tagged, correct?
Right.
Correct.
So, you know, that even though it may seem ludicrous in the situation, it is kind of a valid point if they legally want to move that motorhome, if that's the issue.
Yeah.
But legally, it can't be parked in the right of way either without registration.
Yeah, because they had to get it into the right of way.
That's right.
Now, come on,
Anyways, we'll take care of it.
we're expecting a lot here.
It wasn't beamed there. So. Okay, next up is the draft of the committee minutes. Anything special there, Mr. Cobb, you want to pass on?
No, sir. I think we've
discussed both.
We did.
Okay. Let me. No old business. First thing up is resolution 736, emergency declaration. Mr. Cobb, you want to speak to that?
Yes, sir. Just Mayor and Council briefly. So as you know, we did enact a resolution 733 on March 17th, declaring the local state of emergency. This allowed us to do a number of things: close City Hall and the restrooms, limit public events, suspend utility late penalties and shutoffs, procurement, and then also address personnel policies that may need to be put in place temporarily to deal with the pandemic. If you recall, when we first adopted this, we made it pretty clear that it wasn't intended to create any kind of local panic, but really just provide us with the tools necessary to address some of these issues that could arise from the pandemic. Most of the cities that have adopted these still have them in place and are extending them. I think we'll probably want to, if this is adopted tonight, we'll want to look at this pretty closely at our next council meeting and decide if we need to continue.
Yeah. And that's what the May 19th would be. That's the next council meeting.
Yes, sir.
And it's like you say, it's a couple of times before, it depends on the feds and the states, what we can do. So, although I think people in general are starting to move around more so and maybe not being as homebound as they once were. So, okay, do we have a motion for Resolution 736?
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution 736 as written.
Okay.
I'll second it. It's the joy of doing it this way.
Yeah.
Okay. And do we have any further discussions or questions? All those in favor of Resolution 736, the resolution extending the local state emergency declared by Resolution 733 through May 19th, 2020, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Not hearing? Okay. Next one up. As I scroll down. Is Resolution 737, adopting 2020 strategic plan. Mr. Cobb, you want to speak to this?
Mayor Bennett and Council, as you know, we've discussed the strategic plan in a couple work sessions now. There were some changes that were requested, mainly issues with the numbering and the lettering, and so we have changed those, as well as we did add some language for stormwater quality under public health, so that we provide that we meet all the stormwater requirements and then provide a report to the council.
Okay.
If there are any questions on that, I'm happy to answer them at this time.
Okay. Yeah. That seems like a good plan. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve Resolution 737 as written.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions? Not hearing any, though. All those in favor of Resolution 737, a resolution adopting the 2020 strategic plan, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Not hearing. Okay. Hold on.
While the mayor is getting to the next item, I did send the council a note earlier, but the resolution number for this next item, supplemental budget, should be 738.
Correct.
I was just looking at.
Okay. Okay, next up is the Resolution 738 supplemental budget. Mr. Cobb, you want to discuss that?
Yeah, so mayor and council, if you look at attachment A, these are the items that we are recommending for a supplemental budget. Community development would be under land use. Our land use planning expenses, as well as our building permits, are still up. For once, I kind of turned this over to our accountant, Laylee Nichols, to look at it and give me her best recommendation, because as I jokingly said at the last meeting, that we would just budget $1 million. That's not probably the best reaction to having a challenging time estimating building permits and land use. So she went and looked at the history and gave me a recommendation, and so that's what you have there.
Okay.
For community development. Part of that is offset by additional revenues for building permits and land use permits. And so if you were trying to do the math, that is why there is a difference. And you'll see that at the bottom it says the net effect of the transfers is $12,400, and that is because of the additional revenue, and then also this $150 for the debt reserve fund. And so there is that. The debt service, as I think most of you were here for, there was a lot of discussion as to how to show the debt service for the library and city hall building, and then also the parks lots that we purchased. And so essentially we had a discussion with the auditor and also with our accountant, Laylee Nichols, and the recommendation was that the debt come out of the general fund, because the library will be the one that owns the library facility. And then the Parks Department obviously will own the parks. And so it would make sense that essentially the debt's paid out of the general fund. And then if we occupy that space for City Hall, obviously we would be doing things related to utility billing and other water and sewer and street related services. And so at that time, essentially they would just pay rent for that. And so it's, at the end of the day, it comes down to an accounting practice. And so that was the recommendation. And so the increase that you see there in debt service, it's just an increase to the appropriation in the general fund. It's not an actual increase in the total debt service. We didn't take on any new debt. It's just basically who's paying for it right now.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 738 as presented.
Okay. We have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Further discussion, questions? All those in favor of Resolution 738, a resolution providing for budget transfers and making appropriation changes for fiscal year 2019-2020, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, fantastic. Moving right along. So we have 739 now. Resolution 739, employee compensation adjustments. Mr. Cobb?
Yes, sir. Mayor Bennett and Council, this is these are some of the changes we discussed at our last work session regarding the two utility worker positions. So this does provide an increase for them that is a little more in line with surrounding municipalities. The other changes are just the one-step increase for all other employees that received a positive evaluation. So the major change would be to that utility worker position. One of the things that we always stress when we do our evaluations is that at the end of the day, it's all subject to the budget. And so if something were to happen between now and say June, the time that the budget is formally adopted by the council, this is not guaranteed, and so it could always change depending on what we end up adopting through our final budget.
Okay. And you sent out a memo saying that Max and Joyce are actually step 10. So if we make a
Correct.
motion, it would be as amended. You're going to change because in your resolution that has them listed as step 9s. That should be step 10s on both those, correct?
And yes, and Mayor Bennett and Council, so I did correct that a couple days ago. And so the resolution that is online and is in Teams should show step 10 for both Joyce Donnell and Max Baker.
I see that.
Yeah, it does. And that's their upgrade, right?
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I see I have the old and the new, so the new works. Okay.
Yeah, somebody found that pretty quickly.
Oh.
I didn't have to find that error myself.
I wonder who that was.
I was
don't
just going
know.
to say, who
Yeah,
would that have been?
they're taking care of you, watching over your shoulder.
They're taking care of themselves.
Yeah. Okay, do we have any other questions or anything about this resolution 739? Not hearing those, do we have a motion?
Where's the motion?
I'll make a motion. Go ahead. Go ahead, Sam.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 739, a resolution making employee compensation adjustments for fiscal year 2020 to 2021 as presented.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Further discussion or questions? Okay. All those in favor of Resolution 739, a resolution making employee compensation adjustments for fiscal year 2020 and 2021, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Not hearing any? You got good people, need to pay them. Okay, next up is advertising council vacancy. Mr. Cobb, you want to present that to us?
Yes, so Mayor Bennett and Council, as you know, Councilor Angelini resigned, I believe it was about a month ago now, to take a job in the Salem area. And so the Lowell Charter does stipulate that the council can appoint an elector to fill the vacancy. This position will be on the November ballot, and typically the council has advertised the vacancy for a full month and then conducted candidate interviews. And so if the council would like to do that, we can put it in the bridge for the month of May, but just wanted to get a formal direction from the city council on how to proceed.
Okay.
Do we feel like in this time right here, a month is long enough?
I think so. It's because it's been vacant now for almost 6 weeks.
Yeah,
So-
but the period of vacancy has very little to do with getting people that are going to want to step up at this time and fill out an application and the process and everything else. I'm a little concerned that we won't get the best pool possible if we have at this time right now. We're at a crux with what the state, the feds, what we're going to do with our decision with emergency protocols and the COVID. I'm just a little concerned that we're not going to get the best pool possible if we have a 4-week period.
And we're not required to fill it. Is that
But
correct?
No.
Yeah. So we can look and see who we get and look at their qualifications and things like that, and then go forward with that. But as Mr. Cobb said, in general practices, as we get open vacancies, we have gone ahead and listed them. So I think whether we appoint anybody into the position, that's a later on decision. But right now, this is just saying, okay, do we go ahead and open this up for? And you never know who may show up or who may put their name in. So, and we don't want to close the door at this point. We have so few people that really want to participate in city government that I think that it'd be wise to just open it up.
And then they'd have to run again to hold the spot. They'd have to run again in November. So in 6 months, they'd have to.
And they can see in those months if that's what they want to do.
Yeah.
My proposal wasn't to eliminate the process. My proposal was to extend the period of opening.
Yeah.
To like a 6-week period versus a 4-week period.
Well, then they were going all the way into July, and I think August, September is the actual filing date. So you're
One.
I think right now, if a person knows that this has an opening, they either the applicants that are considering it already have considered filling out the application, or else they decided not to. So I think June 2nd would be a good day to start with. And if we don't have anybody, we can go.
Mayor Bennett and Council, just to add something too, I mean, I still have the last announcement from the last time we did this. And so if the council wants, I mean, I can post it online tonight on Facebook, on the city website, and you would have almost 6 weeks until that June 2nd meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, why don't you do that? Yeah.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
It's a good idea. Thank you, Tim.
And we can put it on the bulletin boards as well, so that's no big deal.
Yeah. Okay.
I just think the more notice, the better.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I agree that we need to make a decision at some point, and but that's fine. But I just think the more opportunity we give candidates, maybe we'll get somebody that will, have a change of heart that hasn't ever volunteered before. That might be a great person.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about this, though, I would say, is that I've noticed there are a lot more people on Facebook and online nowadays. And so we actually may get some more interest than we've had in the past, just because, frankly, people are paying, I think, more attention to public announcements than they have in the past.
There seems to be a lot of political experts online too, is what I've noticed.
You've been watching me, darn it.
Sometimes I think I'm one too. I saw Patty the other day, by the way.
She called me yesterday.
Did she?
She called, but I was in Mexico and I didn't get the voicemail. I never got the voicemail that she called. So
right. I
Yeah.
told her you hadn't heard from her, and she said, I called her, and I said, well, I think she was gone. So anyway, she looked great.
Yeah.
She loves her job. She's doing
Oh,
well.
She's working for the
Unemployment office.
Oh my
She's a
God.
communications
She
person. for the
said it
Yeah.
slammed.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry, the employment office.
Yeah,
But
whatever.
she's working
Busy.
at home right now. So
Oh
she's
my-
down here.
Oh,
I can't even, that's like
good for
trial
her.
by fire, instant.
No
You work
kidding.
in the health industry, Sam.
Yeah, well, I'm furloughed half-time, so,
I was just gonna say, that's bad.
yeah,
I don't mean working for them, but I mean the whole situation is bad.
yeah.
Anyway,
No, most of us are
on
furloughed.
we go. Yeah.
So the only point of clarification on this, then your motion is the date that you would want to close it, or you could just say open and, well, open until filled with first review on June 2nd.
That's how we
I
put the
like that.
motion.
Let's just leave it the way it is.
Go for it,
sounds
Tim.
good.
Yeah.
Go for it, Tim.
So I like the make a motion to open it to review until filled with approval on June 2nd. Is that what how it's phrased? That's my motion, I think.
That'll work just fine. Yes, first review on June 2nd.
Okay.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion? Questions? Okay, we have a motion to advertise the vacancy for city council position 2 and host candidate interviews beginning on Tuesday, June 2nd. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, we're cooking. Okay, we have 7:40 up for us now, Mr. Cobb.
Yes, sir. This is a really exciting resolution. Essentially, it would allow us to close the debt reserve fund. There's about $120 in change, but it's collecting interest every month. And so basically what happened is I budgeted to close this year, but then forgot that it's going to collect interest all year long. And so it did, and we didn't have enough authority to transfer the remainder of it out, which will go to the, I believe it's the sewer fund. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. Questions? Motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 740 as written.
Okay, second?
I'll second that.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to, we have discussion. Does anybody want to talk about this any? Okay, not hearing. A motion to approve resolution 740 as written. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Not hearing. Okay. Oh, we're down to mayor comments. Short and sweet. For the second year in a row, our community has been tested. Last year with the snow and the rain events, the school district, volunteer fire department, and the city distinguished themselves by uniting to ensure people's safety and welfare were maintained. We are being tested again this year. The school district has been providing meals and homework. Fire department has continued to respond to calls, and the city has ensured essential services are provided. Each agency has been using social media platforms to keep the community informed. The community should take great pride in the performance of our local agencies, as well as the individual first responders and our other many essential workers. Bless you all. Anybody else? Not hearing anything.
I'd like to say that I think I'm pretty happy with how this is going. I mean, it really is nice that we can do this and meet this way, and it's been a pretty good thing. I think you made a good choice on the platform to use, Jared. I think even with the extra folks tonight with the, the presentations and the public speakers, it actually went pretty well. So that's good.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Thank you.
Impressive.
Great.
Yeah,
Good.
definitely.
Okay. So next time we're going to meet is 5:30 next Wednesday before the budget committee.
Right.
Anything?
And Jared, are we going to get copies of the budget, or how's that
Yes.
going to work? Oh, good.
Yeah, so I actually have to send those out by Thursday morning. So it has to be a week before the meeting. And so you'll all get copies as well as the budget committee.
Okay, because that'll be, so How many are on the budget committee?
So typically 10. We've got one vacancy, so we have a total of 9.
So are we going to be able to, we're going to do it this way?
And actually, no, since we only have 4 counselors, we have a total of 8. Yes, we will do it this way.
Okay.
Through video.
Okay. Well, it'll be nice to have the hard copy. Thank you.
Yes.
I don't want to try and do that online. I'll be
Okay,
lost.
so if you would like a hard copy, we will print those because I didn't even think about that piece, but we can certainly do that for the budget. Make that one exception.
Well,
If you don't want one, though, let me know and we won't print it.
Just email it.
How long is the document?
it's huge.
Yeah.
Shorter than a council packet, I think.
You think? Really?
200 pages,
Certainly shorter than the one tonight.
200
Okay,
pages.
fine. Do it
About
online.
that.
I don't want to waste the paper.
I'm fine online.
Whatever works for you, just let us know and we'll print it.
Yeah.
The thing, I guess, if you can send it to my email, because I use my iPad
Yeah.
to flip through stuff. So I need it in my email, please.
Yes,
I can
please.
do that. The other thing that we can do is I don't know how it worked for the presentation for you, but I can share the screen as well as we go through the budget.
That worked.
Well,
good.
okay.
But it
that's-
also was nice to have it here.
Sure.
So we could go back.
Yeah,
and read
yeah,
and
I
take
think
That's what I did
prob-
tonight.
Yeah,
I-
whatever works.
Emailing it out sounds good, or making it available for that. I think that works for most everyone.
Yeah, because
We
then I
can
can
do
just.
both,
I-
unless you really want to see your face on the screen in the middle of the budget committee meeting.
I don't care.
Okay.
Put my pajamas. No, not that early. Uh,
That works.
Okay, you guys.
All righty. If not, I'm not hearing anything else, we're adjourned at 8:58. Everyone have a good evening.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Night.
Yeah, and you can stop recording us.